Sup guys, it's Alex here and welcome to another edition of the Bracketology update. This one is for March 4th of 2020 and man, I'm doing my first one for CBS Sports. This one is from Jerry Palm. Usually I do it for Joe Lunardi, but he hasn't updated it since March 2nd, which I mean this one is for March 2nd as well, but it's something new. It's something to give you guys content, and after a crazy Monday and Tuesday of college basketball where last night ended up going to the number 6 Kentucky versus Tennessee game, which I just uploaded the vlog for that. Make sure you guys go check that out. We were up by 17 at one point, but somehow just blew the game away. We only had 12 rebounds in the second half. We allowed 50 points. It was just an awful game for Kentucky. Bad look for him. Probably going to drop him in the seed line to maybe a back end 3, maybe high end 4 or something like that. We'll kind of see what happens with the fallout from that. But we are taking a look here at the CBS Sports one. And in the first round, I will be seeing the Elite 8, and I most likely will be seeing the Sweet 16 in the Midwest Regional at Indianapolis. So I'm really excited to see these couple games here. We have Kansas as the 1 seed versus the 16 seed playing game, as I mentioned as I mentioned later when we check in those playing games. Then we have Arizona and LSU as the 8 versus 9, BYU and Akron as the 5-12, Michigan State versus Liberty as the 4-13. I think that one would be a pretty interesting game to see, though Liberty did struggle with NGIT last night. If they lose in their conference tournament, they're not going to make the tournament, I don't think. Then we have Wisconsin and Providence as the 6 and 11, Duke and Little Rock as the 3 and 14, Michigan and Wichita State as the 7 and 10, and then Seton Hall and Colgate as the 2 and 15. Then over here in the East Regional, we have San Diego State as the 1, Montana as the 16, St. Mary's as the 8, Oklahoma as the 9, Auburn as the 5, East Tennessee State as the 12. I really like them as a 12 in that matchup. Penn State as the 4, Vermont as the 13, Illinois as the 6, which is pretty high because I think Joe Lunardi only has them as like an 8 or a 9. So I kind of like that from Jerry Palm. I think a 6 or a 7 is probably where they need to be at right now. Then Northern Iowa as the 11, Villanova and Hofstra as the 3 and 14, Marquette and Indiana as the 7 and 10, Dayton and Wright State as the 2 and 15. Then if we scroll down here to the next 2 regionals, in the South, we have Baylor and Radford as the 1. As the 1 and 16. I don't know why their logos aren't uploading here. It's just kind of weird for CBS Sports. Then we have Xavier and Arizona State as the 8 and 9. Iowa versus the winner of the playing game at the 12 spot in the South Regional, which you can see is Richmond versus Texas. Texas has been absolutely killing it recently. They're on like a 3 or 4 game win streak, beating quality opponents like Texas Tech, West Virginia, and last night they had a crazy buzzer beater shot to beat Oklahoma on the road by 1. They are looking like a team kind of like UCLA who's playing their way into the tournament. Then we have Louisville as the 4, Yale as the 13. And then speaking of UCLA, if we have them as an 11 here with West Virginia as the 6, I think that's a bit too high for West Virginia at this point. Then we got Creighton as the 3, North Texas as the 14, Colorado as the 7, Virginia as the 10, Maryland as the 2, and then North Dakota State as the 15. Then if we take a look over here in the West Regional, we have Gonzaga as the 1 facing the winner of the playing game for the 16 spot. That one doesn't really matter. Then we have USC and Florida as the 8 and 9, Ohio State and Stephen F. Austin as the 5 and 12. I think that one would be a great matchup to see. Then Oregon and New Mexico State as the 4 and 13, Butler versus the winner of the other playing game as the 11 spot. We have Utah State and Texas Tech. Then we have Kentucky as the 3, UC Irvine as the 14, Houston and Stanford bringing up the 7 and 10 slots, and then Florida State as the 2 and Belmont as the 15. And then if we take a look at the bubble, as you guys saw with the playing games, we have Texas Tech, Utah State, Texas, and Richmond as the last 4 in. And then the first 4 out are Mississippi State, Cincinnati, Rhode Island, and Arkansas. And I will be giving away 2 NCAA tournament tickets if we hit 5,000 subscribers by March 17th, which is the first of the first 4 games in Dayton. Right now we are at 4,320, so we are still 680 away, but we are chipping away at it. We have 13 days to go. I think we can do it, especially once the tournament comes around, but make sure you guys are subscribing. If you haven't already subscribed and entered the tournament ticket giveaway, all you have to do is just take a screenshot of, you have to subscribe first, then take a screenshot of you being subscribed, then follow me on Instagram at AlexPrice24. As you can see right there, we just hit 1,000 followers on that, so thank you guys for that. Then DM me a screenshot of you being subscribed. Tell me what your favorite college basketball team is, and then the closest NCAA tournament location to you. So let's go and get into the bracketology and my picks for them. First, in the Midwest Regional, we have Kansas beating the winner of NC Central and Robert Morris. I think that one's pretty obvious. Then we'll have Arizona beat LSU with Nico Mannion moving on here as an 8. I think that may be a bit low for them, especially considering their net ranking is really high. I think they're near the top 10 in that. We'll kind of see what happens with that when it shakes out. BYU, I do think, will beat Akron. Then we got Michigan State holding on here against Liberty. Then I'm going to go with an upset pick here. I'm going to go with Providence as the 11/6. Providence is one of those teams kind of like UCLA and Texas who's playing their best basketball at the right time, kind of like Wisconsin too. I mean, Wisconsin's been killing it recently. They've been on a winning streak too, but I really like Providence here. They just went on the road and beat Villanova. I think that they can get the job done here in an 11/6. Then we have Duke beating Little Rock. Michigan, I think, will be able to beat Wichita State. Haven't been too impressed with Wichita State recently. Then we have Seton Hall beating Colgate. Then first spot in the Sweet 16, we have Kansas beating Arizona. Then we also have Michigan State holding off here against BYU. Then we have Providence and Duke. As much as I want to pick Providence here to beat Duke, Duke did impress me against NC State. And I think that they'll be able to get the job done here as the 3. Then Seton Hall and Michigan. I do think that Seton Hall will be able to get the job done here with Miles Powell and move on to the Sweet 16. Then first spot in the Elite 8, Kansas and Michigan State. I'm actually going to go with a huge upset pick here. I'm going to go with Michigan State. Michigan State just went on the road and beat Penn State last night. I think that they can get the job done here. I think that they can beat Kansas. Michigan State is one of the teams that are streaking right now. They were the number 1 preseason pick for a reason. I think they get the huge upset in this scenario here as the 4/1, especially if Azubike isn't 100% by the time the tournament rolls around. I think Michigan State can definitely get the job done there. Then I think that Seton Hall with Miles Powell, I think they will move on here and beat Duke to face Michigan State in the Elite 8, which I think would be a crazy Elite 8 to see in the Midwest Regional. And I do think that Cassius Winston and Michigan State will move forward here as the representative of the Midwest into the Final Four. So then if we go down here to the East Regional, we have San Diego State versus Montana. Obviously, San Diego State's going to win that one. I wouldn't be too worried about another 16/1. Then I think that St. Mary's will be able to hold off here with Jack Fort against Oklahoma. Then I'm going to go with an upset pick here and go with East Tennessee State. You guys know if you watched my last Bracketology, I had East Tennessee State upset Duke. And if I think they can beat Duke, I think they can definitely beat Auburn, especially if Okoro doesn't play by then. I know he's playing right now, but they may hold him off there. He's been struggling with a little bit of injuries, and plus Auburn's just been too inconsistent as a team and too inefficient. I think East Tennessee State gets the job done there. Then I'm going to go with Penn State beating Vermont, though Vermont's definitely a team you need to watch out for. They can surprise some people in the tournament, especially if you're not too familiar with them. And I think that Illinois with Ayo DeSumo will be able to hold off Northern Iowa here. Villanova will hold off Hofstra. Then I'm going to go with Marquette and Marcus Howard, even though they've lost like 5 of their last 6 games. I think that they can beat Indiana if Marcus Howard can catch fire. Then we got Obi Toppin and Dayton moving on here past Wright State. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we got San Diego State over St. Mary's. I'm going to move East Tennessee State onto the Sweet 16 as a 12 seed. You guys know if you've been following my bracketologies how much I really like East Tennessee State. I think they can get the job done there and upset Penn State to move on to the Sweet 16. Then I'm going to go with another upset here. I'm going to go with the 6 seed Illinois Fighting Illini. Moving on to the Sweet 16, they just gave Brad Underwood like a 3-year extension a couple of days ago. I think that they get the job done there with the Sumo powering them past Villanova. I'm going to go with Obi Toppin and Dayton moving on past Marquette. Then first spot in the Elite 8, East Tennessee State. As much as I really want to pick them here, you got to go with the team that only has 1 loss this season. You got to go with San Diego State. Then I'm going to go with Dayton, ending Illinois' kind of surprise run, I would say. You wouldn't really expect Illinois to be able to make a run in the tournament with their recent history in college basketball, which sets up an Elite 8 matchup of San Diego State versus Dayton, which I'm going to have Obi Toppin and Dayton move on here past San Diego State and into the Final Four, which sets up a Final Four matchup of Michigan State and Dayton, which more on that to come. I think that would be a great Final Four matchup to see, especially as a college basketball fan. I'd really like to see that happen. Then we have Baylor versus Radford. We're going to have Baylor end up winning that one. Then we have Xavier and Arizona State. I do think Arizona State will be able to hold off there and get the victory. And Iowa, I think, will be able to beat the winner of Texas and Richmond, which I think would be Texas. We got Luka Garza moving on there. He's one of the Player of the Year contenders along with Obi Toppin. That I think that would be a great matchup for Iowa. Then we have Louisville holding off here against Yale. West Virginia obviously will lose the first round to UCLA. I don't really like picking UCLA to move on here in the first round, but I really don't like West Virginia. I think it's the lesser of 2 evils here with UCLA moving on. Then we have Creighton holding off here against North Texas, and I apologize for not being able to show the rest of the bracket here. Here we go. Then Colorado and Virginia. I think that Virginia would be able to get the 10/7 upset here. I think they've been pretty consistent as of late. Maryland, I think, will be able to hold off North Dakota State. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we got Baylor moving on here past Arizona State. Louisville, I think, as a 4 seed is a bit underseeded. I think there are 2 in Joe Lunardi's updated Twitter Bracketology. I think he hasn't updated it actually on ESPN, but he lists his top 4 seeds in each region every day on Twitter. Then Creighton, I think, will be able to hold off here against UCLA. Then we got Maryland beating Virginia. Then for a spot in the Elite Eight, I do think Baylor would be able to hold off or be able to beat Louisville. I think Baylor has great depth. I know they did just struggle at home against Texas Tech, but they got the job done there. I think they get the job done here against Louisville. Then we got Creighton beating Maryland. Both these teams are coming off recent losses. Creighton got destroyed by St. John's, and then Maryland lost to Rutgers. I think that Creighton is one of the most efficient teams in college basketball, which, I mean, they are one of the most efficient teams in college basketball. I think they can get the job done here against Anthony Cohen in Maryland. But then for a spot in the Final Four, you got to go with the team that's been near the top all season long. You got to go with Baylor winning that one. So then if we go down to our final region, out there in the West, we have Gonzaga versus the winner of Prairie View, A&M, and Siena. That one would obviously be Gonzaga. USC and Florida. I do think that Florida with Kerry Blackshear can move on here past USC. Then Ohio State will beat Stephen F. Austin, though I'd love to see Stephen F. Austin make a run kind of like East Tennessee State. I just don't think it would happen here against Ohio State. Ohio State's looking like a really good team recently. Then I'm going to go with another upset pick here. I know the last one that I did with Joe Lunardi, I picked New Mexico State to upset Oregon. I'm going to do it again. Neither team has played a game since then, so there's no reason for me to change my opinion. New Mexico State hasn't lost a game since mid-December. They're on an 18-game winning streak or something. I think they're going to surprise a lot of people. They almost upset Auburn last year. I think they can get the job done here. And then I'm going to go with Butler holding off here against Texas Tech. I don't think that Utah State will end up making the tournament. I do think Texas Tech will end up making the tournament, but I like Butler moving on there. And they will face Kentucky, who will beat UC Irvine. Then I'm going to go with Stanford here in a 10-7 over Houston, and then Florida State over Belmont. I almost said Vermont. Then for a spot in the Sweet 16, we have Gonzaga beating Florida. Then we also have Ohio State. As much as I want to pick New Mexico State moving on here, I do think Ohio State has been able to turn it on here in late February moving into March. Then we have Kentucky beating Butler. I think Kentucky will be able to hold off there. And then Stanford, I think, will lose to Florida State. Then for a spot in the Elite Eight, we do have Gonzaga moving on here. They've only lost twice all season, once to BYU and then once to a hot Michigan team in the battle for Atlantis. I think they move on here to the Elite Eight. And then Florida State versus Kentucky. Both these two teams are coming off a loss. Kentucky versus Tennessee, and then Florida State versus Clemson. If the first half Kentucky team shows up, they can win the national championship. But if the second half Kentucky team from the Tennessee game shows up, they will lose to Florida State here, which honestly I'm going to go with Florida State moving on here, especially if I pick Kentucky, I'll probably get called a homer. But I'm not going to do that. I'm going to pick Florida State moving on here to the Elite Eight, then which sets up Gonzaga versus Florida State for a spot in the Final Four, and I do think Gonzaga would end up winning that one. So we do have 2 #1 seeds in the Final Four, but we also have a 4 seed and then a 2 seed. So then if we take a look at the Final Four, we have Michigan State versus Dayton. I do think that Cassius Winston and Michigan State would be able to move on here past Dayton, and they would face the winner of Gonzaga and Baylor, which I do think at this point would be Baylor, and set up a battle between the green teams of Michigan State and Baylor in the national championship. And I'm going to go with Baylor winning it all. I know they did just lose to Kansas, and they did struggle against Texas Tech, but I think they can get the job done here. They were the top team in the nation for a reason. They won 23 games in a row for a reason. I think they get the job done here. So thank you guys for watching. I hope you enjoyed it. Be sure to like and subscribe if you did. Make sure you enter the NCAA tournament ticket giveaway. Make sure you just subscribe in general, and I will see you all later. Thanks for watching.